evidently this is happening, this transformation, this work of grace. If your experience, your grace, and mine, which is similar, I've seen incredible blessing over the period of COVID, very tangibly. And I've heard from numerous priest brothers similar words. I know that there are many churches that have suffered and may not even survive this crisis, but there are also many churches that have really thrived. What are the reasons in your mind that there have been so many blessings, so many new people at churches, such growth during the COVID crisis? Why?
Faithfulness. People are drawn to the fruits of faithfulness. And there's a very obvious correlation to anyone who wants to look at it between parishes that have declined during this period and those that have grown. And almost universally, I won't say absolutely because there's exceptions to every rule, but almost universally, the parishes that have declined are those that have succumbed to fear and have succumbed to worldliness, rather than those that have been faithful to the church and her traditions, even when that puts the intellect and the mind at odds with the fears of the world. So the churches that have said, we're going to stop venerating icons because we're afraid of touching things. We're going to stop having confession because we're afraid of being close to people, even in places where the governments have not required such things. They have found, and it shouldn't surprise anyone, their populations shrinking because people sense, I'm being deprived of something I should not be deprived of. And the places where, sometimes at great labor and intense work required to do it, have found ways to keep the church's practices alive in the face of restrictions that might make it complicated, have found people flocking to them. This is one of the reasons why in my own diocese almost every parish has grown so much during this period, is we have never shut the door on confession. And people come and they say, I have not been able to say confession in 6 months. Well, why on earth not? There is no reason that this should be impossible. There's no government that I know of that's actually mandated rules that make it impossible. But people, out of fear, take the things going on in society and say, well, we must stop this and this and this. People want fidelity to what the church teaches. And I'm not talking about mindless fanaticism of saying, no disease can ever touch me, no sickness can ever harm me. This is nonsense. It's a lack of faith. A faithful Christian says, I might well get sick, but so be it. It's in God's hands. I'm not going to let that possibility stop me from doing what the Lord commands of me. And I'm not going to let myself be deprived of the grace that God wishes to bestow because of the fears society is bringing in.
Your response makes me think of a beautiful text in 1 Corinthians when St. Paul describes that it's necessary that schisms and divisions take place so that those who are approved may become evident. And St. John Chrysostom, in his commentary on that, affirms that the church is put through constant trials as a part of God's will so that the faithful can become obvious, and especially faithful clergymen, so that the faithful can know who to affix themselves to and who to avoid. It's a fascinating interpretation on Chrysostom's part, and also shows maybe some of the miracle of God's providential working through trials and tribulations. He wasn't talking about diseases, but spiritual diseases of schisms and divisions. I also wonder if perhaps also because the West has been so secularized and has been hiding from death and trying to put death out of mind and out of sight, if the sheer forcefulness by which death appeared might be used to stir up in the minds of people the glories of the good news. You know, the good news is good news if you believe in bad news. If you don't believe in bad news, I mean, if everything's great, I'm never going to die, what do you need Jesus for at all? I wonder if perhaps that has been an aspect of what's drawn people, if that they've had their life shaken, they're asking larger questions about, well, what would happen to me if I do die?
There comes a point in every person's life, if they take their faith seriously, where they have to confront the question, do I actually believe the things that I say I believe? It's all well and good to say, as we're doing now for a few more days, Christ is risen, truly he is risen. But do you actually believe what you're saying? Because if you believe those words, then death can no longer captivate you as some unconquerable enemy. If you actually believe that Christ has risen from the dead and conquered death, that has to radically change the way you look at everything, including your own death and sickness. And in times of peace and tranquility, we say all sorts of things, and we think we believe them, but they're never challenged, which is why the church has always flourished most in times of persecution or famine or pestilence. We always pray to God, relieve us from persecution, famine, pestilence, plague, and so on. But in point of reality, God gives us these things precisely because through them faith is strengthened by that testing, like iron is forged in the fire. And the fact that a disease comes along where people think, this could make me ill, this could end my life, that should be something that you're aware of anyway. There are many things that could end your life. None of us know if we'll have another day, another 5 minutes. And yet it takes a global pandemic for people to start saying, I wonder what will happen when I die. And to start questioning, in a positive sense, perhaps I should take more seriously the faith that I claim to believe in. So this is precisely why the church is strengthened when these moments are embraced properly. I said to one of my parishes that I was visiting, I said, look, a year and a half ago, I had to beg you to come on time to the liturgy. I had to plead with you to be here before the gospel was read. Russian Orthodox Christians are notorious for thinking the liturgy begins about halfway into the liturgy.
Not just Russian Orthodox.
Yes. And I said, but look now, because of what's happened and the difficulties, the fact that we've had to limit numbers in certain places, therefore that means if you want to be inside, you have to be here at the beginning. Now when I arrive at the beginning of the liturgy, the church is full to capacity. Look how much more seriously you're taking your faith because of the struggles you've been through. Our wonderful Metropolitan Hilarion, the first hierarch of our church abroad, he issued an epistle last year during one of these lockdowns and said very beautifully, I thought, perhaps we had taken for granted what we had been given before, the fact that the church was always open, always here. If we wanted to come and pray, the doors would be open. Perhaps God knew exactly what he was doing when he said, I will make it hard for you for a while. I will close the doors so that you learn to love what you ought to love.